Welcome back, everybody. Rob from Revelation Rain with another video just for you. And today I'm going to talk about how I met Grant. And I'm going to do a series on how I met the different members of Revelation Rain, how they came into the fold, etc. All right, but before I get into that, I want to show you this because I did a video already on Day of the Lord, the vinyl release, and then Day of the Lord, the other sides, which are 4 songs that didn't fit on the first vinyl, all right? Because there's 14 tracks total on the original release. And speaking of the original release, I have the CD right here. A little bit of a glare. There we go. Day of the Lord by Revelation Rain. This is the original CD that came out in 2021, April 29th of 2021. Here's the back side of it with a picture of the band, our record label, some of the credits. And what's funny is when I put this together, there's a lot of work that goes into putting these packages together. Put it all together, got it all done, had it printed, and then when we got them, I realized I had left off the track listing. There's no track listing on the outside of the CD. Now inside there's a track listing along with the lyrics to all the songs, but on the outside there's no track listing. So what we did, we got some stickers printed up. They had the track listing, and then we just put it right on the front of the CD. Now, it was on the shrink wrap that goes on the outside of this, so this one no longer has it. But there would have been the shrink wrap and then a sticker somewhere here, or here, either way, with the track listing. So that's how we fixed that. Anyway, the first CD, and I don't have any copies of it. I need to get some. I don't have any copies of the first CD. The first CD that we did was just in like one of those, I don't want to, it's not even a digipack. It's just a folder, really. It's just a piece of cardboard, you know, with the artwork, and then a CD slides out. Real simple. So that's what that one was. But we decided when we did the second one, we wanted to take it up a notch and go with a jewel case. So this comes in an actual jewel case. So when you open it up, of course, you know, right under the CD tray, another photo of the band. And then, like I said, there is a book that you can take out of there. And this has the lyrics to every single song that's on here, all 14 tracks, plus notes from the band and whatever else. All right, so we really put a lot of time, effort, and money into this CD release. Even the CD itself has the album artwork on it. Turned out really nicely. But anyway, just wanted to mention that I have a handful of these left. If anyone wants to buy one, they're $10, say. Just contact me. Like I said, I only have a few left. But if you want one, I'll get you one. So that's that. Day of the Lord, the original CD release. So how did I meet Grant? Now, I've given quite a bit of history of the band throughout the years that I've been doing videos for this channel. And then also, if you buy our book, which is in a previous video, there's a link for that to buy it on Amazon. It's got the complete history of the band. Really, really good book. But briefly, I'm just going to tell you how I met Grant, because Grant and I were the first 2 members of the band. Now, prior to meeting Grant, I had just had my songs. I'd recorded a handful of demos with a guy that lived in the same town that I did. And I put those demos up on SoundCloud and Reverb Nation, maybe? I think it was Reverb Nation. And I started getting really good responses just off these demos. So I thought, well, you know what? Someday I'm going to want to put a band together. So it's good that I have these demos. And sure enough, put a band together with a friend of mine, Josh. He was a bass player, and so he and I put a band together. It was a band called Volume 11. I hate that name. It was so stupid, but that's what it was. That band broke up, and then Josh and I reformed, and we decided we needed to find a drummer. Well, this is, you know, connections and small world and all that kind of stuff. Grant, who we didn't even know yet, and Josh had a common friend. And this common friend knew that we were looking for a drummer, and he knew a drummer who was looking for a band. So after the debacle of Volume 11 breaking up, I was pretty much done with it. But Josh talked me into let's at least go down to Grand Rapids and meet this drummer and see what happens. So I'm like, all right, fine, we'll go. That drummer was Grant. That was in early 2019. So the three of us, we practiced, did a rehearsal. It went really well. I was like, boy, I'm glad I came. And so we decided to put a band together. So it was the three of us, and then we ended up getting a lead guitarist. But that band was called Last Asylum, and it did mostly cover tunes. And we did a few of my originals, but it was mostly cover tunes. Grant and I were never happy with that setup. Josh and the guitar player were okay with that. But Grant and I are both Kiss fans, and we wanted to put together a band that was similar to Kiss, and that all original material. Everybody writes, everybody sings, everybody plays their own instrument, and we would do all originals, visually oriented. Just that all for one for all four guys having, a distinctive persona that fits within the band, etc. Think of Kiss or even the Beatles. I'm not a Beatles fan, but there's no denying their impact and the template that they set for bands. All right. So that's what we had always wanted. We wanted to do all originals. And through a series of events, which you can read in the book, that band ceased to exist. And Grant and I parted on not so good terms. So I just went back to doing what I had done prior to all of that. I just started, putting my songs on some other platforms and see what happens. And they continued to do pretty well for me. But I had no interest in being in a band. And despite the fact that Grant and I had ended our working relationship on bad terms, it's one of those things like it's fire and water, or whatever you want to call it. There's that fission, but there's also that chemistry. And I knew that even though Grant and I had these strong personalities that sometimes clashed, we had the same mentality, the same focus, the same drive, ambition to make a band work. And so I thought, if there's ever a way to somehow work with Grant again, then maybe, if we could put all this stuff behind us. And my wife had even said too, that, if ever you put a band together again, just make sure it's with Grant, because even though you guys have these differences, you also have the same mentality, and you guys both have that same focus and drive, and you have a goal, whatever. So even my wife had said that. And I remember my wife and I were somewhere. We had to go to the laundromat for something. And I get this phone call, and it comes up Grant. And I hesitated to answer it. So I let it go to voicemail. And my wife said, "Who was that?" And I said, "It's Grant." I said, "I don't know what he wants. I doubt it's anything bad. We'd already said all our stuff, and hopefully that was behind us." I said, I wonder if he's going to ask about putting a band together or something. She goes, "Well, again, if you're going to, I'd prefer it if you did it with him." So I called him back, and we just talked. It was basically the initial reason for him extending the olive branch was just to put the friendship back together and to put the past behind us and resolve any unresolved issues. Which is what we did. And then he kind of offhandedly said, "If ever you do put a band together again, if you need a drummer, I'd be glad to do it." And I said, "Well, I said, I'm not currently doing anything other than putting my music up on a few different platforms." I said, "Maybe it is time to put a band together and take these songs out there to the world." So we scheduled a meeting. We met at his house about a week later. And we, again, just kind of reiterated, the stuff that had driven us apart and resolved any of that. And then we sat down and we kind of put together a manifesto, so to speak. And we just said, this is what we want out of the band. All the things I just talked about, visually oriented, all originals. It's a Christian band. Everybody plays, everybody sings, everybody writes, everybody plays their own instrument. It's going to be an all-in type thing. And so we need to find two other two other like-minded people to do this band with us. But initially it was just going to be Grant and I. And so we worked all that out. We had it all set. We said, well, let's play a couple of tunes because, you know, we haven't played together and probably, well, the band that we were in previously broke up in November of 2019, and it was early March of 2020 that we were now having this meeting. And so this was the first time that we had played together in quite a long time. So we played a few tunes, and then we said, hey, let's get together next week and really start working on the songs. Well, remember what happened in March of 2020, and I'm going to get into the who, what, where, why, and all that kind of stuff. That's what this channel is about. But we all know that everything shut down. So we never did have that follow-up meeting until about 2 or 3 months later. And that is when we sat down, we rehearsed, we got some songs down, and then we started looking for a lead guitarist and a bass player. But that's how I met Grant. Was just through a guy, I think his name is Mike, that happened to know Josh, and happened to know Grant, and happened to know that we were looking for a drummer, and the drummer was looking for a band. And it's just one of those chance things that just worked out. Once we had a solidified lineup, Grant and I knew that we were on to something. The CDs did well for us. We were getting a lot of shows. We were doing a lot of press. The band really took off. It was a really good time. And not to say they didn't have, you know, the trials and tribulations that most bands have. It did. But on the whole, it was a great band. And I think we ran for about 2.5 years, if I remember right. About 2.5 years. And it was a good run. I wish it would have been longer, but, you know, stuff happens. But I'm just going to leave it there. That's how I met Grant. And what, you know, let me just talk a little bit about Grant and what he brings, what he brought to Revelation Rain. It's funny because Grant would always say in interviews what great songwriters that I was, JT was, Marty was. And he'd always say, you know, I'm not really a writer. I'm just here to play the drums, whatever else. And I remember one time he said that in an interview, and it clicked with me. And I was like, you know, I don't think that's true. And I even said in the interview, I said, anyone that contributes to a song, whether it's with a melody, a harmony, the arrangement, lyrics, music, any one of those 5 categories, if you're contributing to that song in any way, in one of those aspects, that makes you one of the songwriters. And I've always said, I regret that we didn't just put on the albums songs written by Revelation Rain, rather than splitting it up to who initially brought it in or who did this or that, whatever. That's my one regret. I wish it would have just said songs written by Revelation Rain, because all of us contributed to every song that was brought in and recorded. But Grant would give really good ideas. I mean, We Are the Night, I talked about that in a previous video, how he contributed to that song, you know, immensely with a lot of the lyrics. But any song that was brought in, we would always work on arrangements. Any song that anyone brought in, it would always change slightly. Because somebody would say, well, what if we take this little left turn here? Or what if we repeat this here instead of doing that? And it would change, it would evolve. So Grant brought a lot of that, but he brought intense drumming. Grant is by far the best drummer I've ever played with. Hands down. And I've played with quite a few drummers, a lot of drummers. But Grant has a focus and an ambition, and I guess just an intensity about him that, you know, it's goal driven. It's about what's best for the song. It's about what's going to catapult this band, this song, this record, this show to the next level. And you don't always find that in a drummer. A lot of times the drummer just wants to see how fast he can play, or how, you know, if he can do a double kick or whatever, and, you know, overplay the song, whatever. Grant was meticulous about making sure that each piece of the song, that it meant something, and that the drum part fit the song, not what was going to showcase how well he could play drums. And he would stress over this. Sometimes it would drive the rest of us nuts because we'd think, well, the drums sound great, as are, Grant. You know, all the different parts that you brought, I think it's good there. He would stress over it. 2 or 3 nights later, he'd be like, I came up with something different for the bridge right here. We'd be like, Grant, I think it's good enough. But more times than not, he was right. You know, whatever idea he had, it would just make the song that much better. But Grant and I, our template was, again, you know, a band like Kiss, who just was all about getting the word out there, getting the name out there, just branding, interviews, radio, internet, whatever you got to do, whatever you can do to get your name out there, to get a song out there, you do it. And we were constantly looking for new ways to promote the band, the songs, the albums, shows, whatever it may be. And again, that was because all 4 of us were like-minded and ambitious enough to do all of that. But for Grant and I in particular, we're coming from this mentality of Kiss. And I don't care if you like Kiss or not, they are, when it comes to branding, merchandise, promotion, they're kings. They are the ones that have set the template for every band that's come after them. All right? So, and certainly for us as well. So yeah, Grant, and then also just on a personal level, great sense of humor. Grant and I had some really good conversations. We got strong personalities, so we do clash. We clash sometimes, that's okay. And it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate that the band is no longer together, because despite the fact that sometimes different band members would clash with one another or whatever else, out of that fusion, out of that chaos, a lot of times came better ideas. Out of all of that, it allowed us to explore areas that we may not have done otherwise. But it always lights the fire. Always lights the fire. So anyway, that's how I met Grant, a little bit about Grant, what he brought to the band. Vocals, I forgot to say that. If you listen to Vengeance Is Mine on our first record, when it gets to that slowed down acoustic part, that's Grant and I alternating on the vocals. And Grant did all of the backing vocals on both records, along with JT and Marty and myself. But he brought a lot to the band, more so, I think, than what most drummers do. And even live, we'd always have him hooked up with what are those called? The headset with the mic on it, because he'd chime in on backing vocals a lot. So it was nice having that kind of band where all 4 guys were singing lead and backing vocals. It just gave it a dynamic that most bands don't have. You know, most bands have that one lead singer, so you always hear that voice, and that's okay. I like a lot of those bands. But I always thought it was cool that a band like Kiss, you know, Ace Frehley could sing the lead, Peter Criss, Gene, Paul, whomever. And that's how it was with Revelation Rain, at least in its original incarnation. We had 4 guys that could sing lead and 4 guys that would be chiming in on backing vocals. So it gave it a nice full sound even when we played live. And that's the other thing too, is that this band, we were able to pull off live everything that we ever put on CD, which again, not a lot of bands can do that. So anyway, that's a little bit about Grant, how we met, and so on and so forth. So, like I said, I'm going to do one for each member of the band. So I'm going to do JT next. All right, guys, you take care, and God bless.